This overview of the Compassion Resilience Toolkit is meant to help you decide if these resources and approach would be beneficial to the culture of your organization. I, along with others from various sectors, are going to tell you what the toolkit is, how it's delivered, and give you some suggested next steps. Combine the learning and activities of the School and Health and Human Services Toolkit. Focus on building a culture of shared accountability and wellness.
It's very foundational in being a successful school. And everybody talks about culture. It's a huge topic in education today is culture, not just, I guess, in education, but in the workplace in general. But it's a word that gets thrown around without a lot of plans in place on how to try to maintain or develop a good culture. And so the thing that I look at from this toolkit, if somebody were to ask me, is this something that you think can help your culture? I would say absolutely. I would highly recommend it for any school district.
Social workers, nurses, doctors, any police officers. A lot of this stuff applies to anybody who's constantly in these human relationships with needy people.
We had a large all-staff meeting where they came in and facilitated a large group session for us. And to me, hit me right away that this was an incredible place to be, that these administrators just really wanted to support their staff, and they wanted to make sure that they're well and that they're thinking about how their interactions all day long with patrons and each other impact their own well-being.
It's very useful, very practical, and very easy to follow, which makes me want to reference it again and again.
I think the toolkit gives me a framework from the administrative end to remind myself of all those things that are important in taking care of people.
The toolkit is designed to engage employees in learning, conversation, and activities about building a culture of compassion resilience from an individual, team, and organizational perspective. Most simply put, compassion resilience is demonstrated when we can find optimism in the midst of all the imperfections around us, having hope when we see significant barriers for ourselves and the people we serve, feeling strong empathy that overrides flash judgments and biases, and accessing strength when we're battling fatigue. The toolkits lay out a series of concepts that build upon each other, like scaffolding to support the overall goal of a compassionate culture for employees and those we serve. Each section of the toolkit takes on one or two concepts and offers a background document for individual learning, activities to engage participants in conversations to make the concepts relevant for their context, visuals to anchor learning and inspire ongoing conversation in common language across the organization, and what we call a circle agenda to guide facilitators if small group meetings are the chosen implementation approach.
I really think that it is so user-friendly, it's beneficial for us as a staff.
We could pull information in from TED Talks or internet websites really easily, but we wouldn't have kind of a plan of each month ways to tie into the previous month. It's a great kind of all-in-one, all-encompassing kind of program where you can sit down with the steps each month and walk through kind of a lesson, some exercises, and then how to put it into practice, and then next month you'll tie that in again.
The toolkit can be implemented in whole staff meetings, in small groups or teams, or a combination of the two. We found that small groups are the best way to engage colleagues in some of the content, and to highlight that the health of a team is foundational to our job satisfaction and a sense of a positive workplace culture. As shown earlier, the agendas for these small groups are given for each section of the toolkit.
When it was first on the agenda, compassion, resilience, we still were under the impression, oh, this is going to be something to talk about how we can show more compassion to kids and help students be more resilient, when actually the shift was, how do you take care of yourself and your staff so that they can help kids become more resilient? How are you more resilient so you can help kids be more resilient?
Over the course of learning how to help and care for others, I'm learning how to help and care for myself.
I think the kit has brought the Appleton Public Library a way to have a shared language about compassion resilience so that we can understand what staff are experiencing, they can explain it to us, and we can react in a better way. just because we're all saying this is important. Self-care is really important, setting really strong boundaries is important, and these are tools that we as an organization are embracing and encourage you to use.
While the toolkits are labeled for schools and health and human services, youth-serving agencies, municipalities, faith-based organizations, and libraries have implemented the toolkits. Here are a few comments on implementing the toolkit in a large library system.
You want to make sure that people kind of maintain the ability to talk about things, and if there are issues that pop up, they are able to more proactively deal with issues and communication problems and compassion fatigue, and issues of burnout, to more proactively kind of address those before they're a problem. And even just being a facilitator, we're doing it together when we're in there. It's really what we can all bring to that, and how we all work together to make a more compassionate workplace. Sometimes people bring in very personal applications of the toolkit and realize that this doesn't really end at the doors of the library, that a lot of these tools are helpful for dealing with family members and dealing with neighbors, dealing with things, out in the community, and not just here at the library.
The 12 sections of the toolkit can be best understood in 3 main segments. The first segment is 3 sections that give common language for what compassion, self-compassion, wellness, and compassion fatigue look like when we experience them. These sections encourage participants to give up any shame around the experience of compassion fatigue and prepares them to learn and apply the skills that build compassion resilience in themselves and their team.
Compassion fatigue was a new term, I guess, to us when we learned about this. You don't think about it because you're in this people service occupation, that everything you do is for somebody else, and you're solving other people's problems throughout the course of the day without even thinking about it if you stay in this business long enough, and it just becomes second nature that you kind of tend to put other people's needs before your own. And this gives you permission and strategies to put your needs and your staff needs before the needs of students for a time.
Generally, just knowing that we're all in this together, listening to each other as we're going through these sessions, even if there's some hesitation about how much to share, or I think that kind of is how things start off sometimes. If I'm having a hard time, do I share that? But as we sit around in a circle and we talk about things that have come up, we kind of hear that we're not alone.
The focus then turns to the team and organizational concepts that one must consider in order to increase compassion resilience. What drives compassion fatigue at work? What drives resilience? Where do we have control? And what would it look like to expand our internal locus of control? What is the role of leaders, teams, and individuals in this change effort? We explore and define the importance of the why, what, and how of expectations. We learn to assess if an expectation is realistic, clear, and aspirational, whether those are expectations we have of ourselves or we hold for others. We then move into looking at how boundaries play a role in maintaining our well-being and support our ability to act with compassion. All this culminates in the co-creation of behavioral agreements for individual teams and the organization. Employees define the culture that they'd like to work in and the behaviors that would make that culture possible. Some groups wonder if this toolkit would be helpful if they felt they already had a great culture. The outcomes for these groups was to codify their current culture in order to protect it from the shifts that happen when personnel changes occur.
With myself, the big change is being more mindful about what these drivers are, and also I think for the people in the training, I think understanding and let them speak. Let their voices be heard by administration of what some of those drivers are, and making sure that those are being communicated effectively throughout the organization is really important and is empowering for staff.
One of the greatest things I think in life is understanding what you can control. and control the controllables, which I think is important for me as a leader, for the teacher as a teacher, and I think for our students as well.
The last sections of the toolkits focus on self-care, with the very last one being a culmination of all concepts, an application to those relationships that are on the periphery of those we serve directly, such as parents of school children or family members of our patients. Self-care activities are woven throughout the toolkit so that participants practice self-care strategies that are related to the topic of that session. Sections 8 through 11 of the toolkit allow for a more in-depth exploration of self-care in all areas of the wellness compass.
Being a teacher for as long as I have been, you get to that point sometimes in the school year where you're just like, oh, okay, I'm done. But yet there's probably still 4 or 5 months left. And when they were talking about it and introducing it to us, it was intriguing to me because of like, oh, I could pull this out. And what could maybe I do? Like, I was just thinking individually first, what could I do maybe with some of my fellow teachers to help them out if I see something? And then maybe we could roll it out to the whole staff. So that part intrigued me about, yeah, this is really what's going on in our schools and how can I use this to my advantage?
But maybe even just have a little bit of fun and get to know people on a level that's not just always professional, but understand them personally, which I think is a huge benefit and makes the job a lot more fun.
On a personal level, it's been really neat to see some of the things that we can do for wellness that I wouldn't have thought of. It's kind of a reminder each month to kind of reassess that and what kinds of things am I doing to be mindful and to take a moment and reflect on how I'm helping someone else through a problem or how much I take on of someone else's problem.
I think that as people trying to learn how to lead these circles, that's been very helpful too, where if I lead 2 different groups and I do it with another person and we can have a chat and the circles we lead might be completely different because we can really try and tailor them to the people we know we're meeting with, and then that also grows and develops over time. As I meet with one group more and more, I kind of know what they respond to and what will make more sense to them. So I think we all kind of grow together through that process, which is also helpful.
After that brief walkthrough of the concepts, I hope this website layout of resources makes even more sense for you. So what are the next steps for you to consider? Many people who participate in the Toolkit overview feel ready to have a team of facilitators trained to implement the toolkit within their organization. The facilitator trainings are led by people who facilitated the toolkit in various sectors and who offer great support. Their main goal is to help facilitators feel confident in the content and to help them think about unique changes that they may need to make for their workplace setting. To join a facilitator training, these are your next steps. Decide who in your organization can form a team that will include an administrative leader, a few people who can facilitate small groups, and at least one person who brings capacity in scheduling meetings, communicating with staff, and tracking what is needed. Prepare to spend a total of 12 hours over a year being trained on implementation. Trainings are virtual and offered as a 2 3-hour training close together, and then 2 more 3-hour trainings a few months later. It is best to plan to begin implementation after the first set of trainings, so the team can bring any questions to the second set of trainings. Go to the training link on the Compassion Resilience website for the schedule of trainings and register according to the directions given there. Some of you may have questions and we're more than happy to connect with you. Please send us an email at wise@wisewisconsin.org. And thank you for your time to learn more about the Compassion Resilience Toolkit. A special thank you to the leaders in this video who shared their experience implementing the toolkit in hopes to inspire others to join in this work. Have a great day.